Good morning, and welcome again to the Ripon Church of Christ and to our YouTube channel. And hopefully you've been watching our series, our summer series on Heroes of Faith. And if you have been with us, I hope you have been enjoying it. I hope you've been getting out some good lessons from these heroes that we read about in the Bible. You know, there was a story about Benjamin Franklin when he was an ambassador to France. On occasion, he would attend the Infidels Club. And they spent most of their time searching for and reading literary masterpieces. One day, Franklin read the book of Ruth to the club. But he changed all the names so they would not recognize that it was one of the books from the Bible. When he finished, they all praised this masterpiece that he read to them, this beautiful short story. And they demanded that he tell them how he ran across this remarkable work of art. And Ben Franklin was delighted to share with those in that club that what he read to them was the book of Ruth. It was from the Bible. See, there are many love stories in history, from the beginning, from the garden, Adam and Eve. We get into Shakespeare's masterpiece, Romeo and Juliet, great love story. Mark Antony and Cleopatra. There's so many. I look at my wife and I, and Tracy and I, we have a great love story. I look at all you out there. I look at my brothers and sisters in Christ, and I see such great love stories. My family, my friends, those in the community. I can see many great love stories. But the story of Ruth is such a great love story. It echoes the greatest love story that has ever been told. And we're going to be looking at that next week, more in detail. See, Ruth is a hero of faith because of her devotion to God. Because of her wonderful kindness and her selfless compassion that she had for her family. Especially on one who so desperately needed it. See, commitment to God often comes through compassion for His people. The book of Ruth takes place in the time of Judges. And the Bible tells us in Judges chapter 21, verse 25, in those days there were no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And because of that, there was great famine in the land. Israel had committed spiritual adultery, and the Midianites and the Amalekites went up against them, and they destroyed their produce as far as Gaza. And there's no sustenance in Israel, Judges chapter 6, verse 3 and 4. See, Ruth was a Moabite. She was from that land of Moab, which was a heathen land. Yet God chose her to be the ancestor of David. And she was named as one of the four women in the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. Yes, it was Ruth's devotion to God. It was shown in her love and loyalty she had for God and family. See, when we show love and loyalty to God, everybody in our lives, especially our family and our friends, and especially our church family, they are treated with love and kindness and respect. We are loyal to them. That was Ruth. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 1 through 5, we see a very sad story take place right away with a lady named Naomi. See, all love stories come with some kind of setback. When we live and we love like God wants to, and we are loyal to God like He expects us to be, there's going to be some problems. There's going to be some trouble that we're going to have. as we live a loving life to God. Naomi faced such tragedy. Her family needed to leave their homeland of Judah because there was famine in the land. And then she lost her husband, Elimelech. And if it couldn't get any worse, she then loses her two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. They all die. Tragic losses. I mean, you think about the grief that she was in. I couldn't imagine what was going through her heart. See, the life of the godly is not going to always be a straight road to glory. There's going to be windy roads. There's going to be mountains. There's going to be great storms that we're going to face along the way. There's going to be roadblocks, rock slides, and wrecks. There's going to be herds of buffalo and elk in the way, so to speak. You know, in Colorado, when you're traveling up to Estes Park, there are like many thousands of elk that you could see out in the distance at times. And often you can have a herd of elk come walk out into the roads. I've seen videos of Yellowstone and all those bison, and people just have to stop their cars and wait. They can only just view. They have to observe until the bison scatter. See, there's many things like that get away in our lives. There's going to be times that we're going to go through difficult travel. See, Naomi faced the worst possible setback that anybody could ever face. Those tragedy that she went through, losing her husband and her two boys. However, she could not see it yet, but there was hope there for her. See, there's two blessings left from her two sons. Her two daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, were blessings for Naomi, especially Ruth. See, Naomi was distraught and she became bitter. I mean, lots could do that to a human being. Of course, she had reason to be distraught, but she did not have a reason to blame it on God, to be mad at God. See, these three widows then went back to Judah as she heard that they were being fed there again. But Naomi told them to return to Moab. And she states this in Ruth chapter 1, verse 13. "No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you. For the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me." See, Naomi is grieving, but she is bitter. She thinks God is against her. But notice the unconditional love from her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Orpah gives her a kiss, but the Bible tells us that Ruth clings to her. Verse 14. When we look at this type of love through these chapters of the book of Ruth, the love in the Greek is that word agape. But the Hebrew word, this type of love means the loving kindness, and it's a steadfast love. It's used to describe in Scriptures as a beautiful picture of love that is a covenant, loyal, steadfast, and unending type of love. Of course, it's used all throughout the book of Ruth. It's used all throughout Psalms, especially those that have been penned by David. It is used in the covenant David had with Jonathan. And he honors that covenant beyond Jonathan's death. He takes care of his crippled son. Here's how Moses describes this type of the love of God for his people in Exodus chapter 34, verse 6 and 7. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God, merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. See, this is the very essence of God, from the attribute of God, that love. Love, loyalty, long-suffering. Ruth was about this. She had love and she had loyalty. And she endured long-suffering. See, nowhere in the Old Testament is this type of love shown more than in Ruth, in the book of Ruth. And then Ruth's going to make a remarkable statement of great faith with this type of love for Naomi. Look at verse 16. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. Yes, Ruth, a Gentile woman, a widow woman, a woman in this type of culture, she's completely dependent on men. Their husbands. They're viewed not as women should be viewed. And without men, without their husbands there, they were very vulnerable to the culture, to the surrounding world in which they lived. The men were the protectors. The men did everything. But the women were not looked at how women should be. So when you really reflect upon these words of Ruth, the more amazing they are. See, Ruth's commitment to her grieving and distraught mother-in-law, Naomi, is simply remarkable. Her commitment came with serious sacrifice. First, Ruth had to leave her own family and land. Second, by going with Naomi, that basically means she would have to live life without a husband, without children. See, Naomi had no man for her. If she married a non-relative, her commitment to Naomi's family would be lost. Third, she went to a land unfamiliar to her. See, she had to get accustomed to the people and to the culture, to these new customs, to a new language. Fourth, seemed to be more of a commitment than marriage. She says, where you die, I will die, and there be buried. See, even when Naomi dies before Ruth, she still was going to stay there. She wasn't going to go back. You see this in verse 17. However, nothing tops the commitment she makes about Naomi's God. Verse 16, look what she states. Where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die. And then she states that her God will be her God. Ruth could not depend on man. Her devotion, her dedication, her dependence was upon the one and only true God. And even with this type of devotion to Naomi remains bitter. She says, I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. She basically says that God has emptied her. God does not deal with people in that way. He is not bitter towards anybody. If we are ones to believe that God's going to leave us empty, then there's something wrong on how we go to Him. There's something wrong on how we approach Him. See, Ruth's devotion and love for her mother-in-law, it's eventually going to give Naomi hope. It's to give her hope to turn back to her God, to see that God never left her. Yeah, Ruth did what was right, but it came with great sacrifice. See, there are times in our lives that we know that it's going to be difficult to make that right choice, and we're going to need to make that choice anyway. But when we do, we can make a great difference in the lives of others. Ruth was rewarded for taking refuge in God. As chapter 2 begins, this love story, there's a new love story that we see. A man named Boaz enters the scene, and Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, Boaz. He was a man of wealth, but he was also a man of God. Look at verses 2 and 3. And Ruth, the Moabitess, said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. See, look at verse 3 shows God's providence working in her life. See, it was not a coincidence Ruth was working in a field owned by Boaz. God's mercy and his providential care was working in her life. See, the sovereign God graciously guided Ruth to Boaz. Proverbs 16:19 says, "A man's mind plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps." See, God may seem silent at times in our lives, but if we really take a close look, we're going to see that His providential care is working in our lives. See, this has all been carefully and providentially worked out in Ruth's life for the glory of her, for the glory of God's people, for Naomi, for Boaz. And then we look at chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, and Boaz shows much love, respect, and kindness to Ruth. He lets her know that she could glean in the field after they do, and that his servants are not going to touch her. They're not going to harm her or molest her. And she's thirsty, there's drink for her. See, here are the most important verses of chapter 2, and it starts in verse 10. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner?" See, this is a question we could all humbly ask God today. Why? Why me? Why would you send me such grace and mercy? Ruth showed such a humble heart to God. She wasn't a natural Israelite. She was a widow. Basically, she was facing 2 strikes against her. And there's no important answer than this. Look at verses 11 through 13. And how Boaz replied to her. Boaz replied to her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your birth and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work and your wages be full from the Lord. the God of Israel, under whose wing you have come to seek refuge. See, Ruth was not favored by God over anyone else. She was not an employee of God in a vineyard. She simply took refuge under the wings of the Lord, so to speak, like a baby eagle does its mother. So we're going to stop with the story right here, and we're going to pick up next week. And we're going to look at this love story as it unfolds. And we're going to go and see, and look into that great love story of Jesus. What are the lessons that we can learn? Well, I would just like to mention these lessons that we can learn from Ruth. When we show ourselves devoted to God, with love and loyalty to Him, we're going to do the same for others. We're going to make those necessary sacrifices to help others in their need. 2, taking refuge in the Lord is going to bring His providential guidance and protection. We're going to see that in our lives. Number 3, God rewards those who are faithful and devoted to Him. I hope today there is something that has pricked your heart, that has encouraged you, that has made you want to devote your lives more to God. And I hope you will be with us next week also. I pray that you have a wonderful week. If you're in this community and you're watching, my phone number is out there on the sign. You can get a hold of me. I'll be in the office Tuesdays through Thursdays, from 8 to 11 in the morning. On Saturdays, I'll be there. You'll see my door open. Come if you need to talk, if you need me to pray with you, whatever you may need. I hope you have a blessed week. Take care.